Welcome to the Sober Boozers Club podcast, a place where we can talk openly and honestly about addiction, sobriety, and strangely enough, beer. I'm Ben, I'm an alcoholic, and for the last 2 years I've been sampling some of the finest alcohol-free beers the world has to offer. Each week, I'll be joined by a different guest to discuss their own lived experiences on all things related to the world of low and no alcohol beverages. So pour yourself a tipple, relax, and let me welcome you to the Sober Boozers Club. In today's episode, I'm talking to Sam Ray, who is the owner and founder of New Kids on the Block, We Can Be Friends. Now, this is a brewery that came from nowhere and released one of the best beers I think I've ever tried. So I really wanted to find out who he was, what he was about, and how he had the audacity to show up here and release a beer that just blew my mind. So we're going to find out about that. And it's just two guys talking about beer, really. So if that interests you, here you go.
What are you drinking?
Oh, you're not going to like this. It's Lucky Saint.
Okay, no, I like a Lucky Saint. I'm actually a fan.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason it's, so renowned, isn't there? Lucky Saint. But
Yeah.
I'm kind of at the point now where I've ran out of nice beers, shall we say, and I've only got my kind of supermarket beers. Because I have to, it's a really annoying thing, what I do, is you have to kind of buy so many beers a month to then film them and talk about them on the internet, and then your money's gone. So if you find ones that you really like, it's like a rare treat that you get to enjoy them more than twice a month.
Yeah, craft beer is an expensive habit, isn't it?
It really is. It really is.
Yeah. It definitely burns a hole in the pocket. So yeah, I'm like a big fan of all kind of styles of beer. So your supermarket ones up to your ones where people are doing really experimental stuff. I think there's a place for all of it, and all of it's made quite different as well. So I think it's like nice to have a mixture of stuff. I think there's a place for everything.
When it's all good quality as well, I say it's not all good quality. I think supermarkets have got a way to go, but you can certainly go into most UK supermarkets and get a decent amount of beer.
Well, what I think is a breath of fresh air is when you go into pubs these days and they've got Lucky Saint on draft.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, any alcohol-free on draft. I mean, it's still not a lot of places, but Lucky Saint seem to have done a good job, especially where I am. I'm like Kent-London border. There's a few places popping up that have got the taps installed, and I mean it's a good lager. It's really good.
It's a clever feature on their website, the whole find us on draft. Like that on holidays, that is like my go-to tool. If I'm in the UK, of course. But speaking of the arrival of new beers, where on earth did you come from? Because I mean, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I was in the whole alcohol-free beer world a little bit, and then I saw We Can Be Friends. And I saw, at the time, I think maybe 60 followers on Instagram. And I thought, okay, what's this? And I'll be honest, I thought, this is going to be awful. And I tried the first beer that you sent to me, and it was possibly the nicest beer I've had. And that's not me, blowing smoke up your ass. It was amazing, to the point that I talked to my local bottle shop and said, this is really good. You need to get this in. So where did you come from? What's your journey been?
Thank you. First of all, that's a pretty high praise. I've been a brewer for about 7-8 years, and I worked in a production brewery, making loads of session pale ales and loads of cask beer, loads of keg beer, loads of cans, just like really pumping it out. So I kind of learned the trade quite a bit and got to know beer quite well, how to keep it, how to brew it. And I'd always been interested in making an alcohol-free beer. I become really excited about it about 3 years ago. It was like Mash Gang come up.
Yeah.
It was never really an option to have just a brewery that does alcohol-free beer. I always see it as I make all these other beers and I have an alcohol-free beer too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it was really exciting and interesting that a brewery come up, was doing exciting things, being a bit different. It's always been seen as a little bit boring, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's got the clinical kind of side to it, doesn't it? I mean, I was talking to
Yeah,
Alex from Mashgang about this, and he said, you get your blue labels, and it's your low and no section of a supermarket, and it's all very clinical and very proper.
yeah,
And then I get what you mean. You see brands like Mashgang that came along, and all of a
yeah,
sudden they were kind of like, no, fuck you, this is craft beer. It just doesn't have alcohol in it. And it's like,
exactly.
oh shit, yeah.
And I think there's still some people that don't really understand it. I tell them I make alcohol-free beer, and they're like, "Why?" And
It's
it's
just
like
popping it.
because it's good. It's a nice drink. It's really interesting. I don't want to sit there and drink Coca-Cola all the time. I want to have a beer, but I don't necessarily want to get drunk. There's so many angles to it that I just yeah. Some people just don't understand it. They just don't get it at all. I think my parents don't get it either. I try to tell them like it's alcohol-free beer, but they're still of the mindset of so you make beer. Is it a lager? And I'm like, no. And they're like, okay, tell me when you've got a lager. And it's like, okay, right, cool, I'll do that. Going back to the question, where did it kind of come from? Yeah, so Mashgang kind of come up. They made it a bit exciting. They seemed like it was a bit of an option.
Yeah.
A little while before that, I was experimenting a bit on some small batch stuff, trying to make some alcohol-free beers. The science for small-scale brewing wasn't really there at the time either, so I was doing some weird things, some really strange things that, like trying to heat the beer up to get rid of the ethanol and like sending it through brewery equipment where it shouldn't go and stuff, just to try and do these things. But
experiment.
Yeah, but as the science got more, I started to experiment a bit more, and I made a couple of beers with the old brewery, and they actually come out really well. And I kind of stumbled across a few things that I don't think everyone does. The whole thing about making a really awesome beer that can stand up to a brewery's table beer or one of their session beers and be as good, if not better, is a really exciting concept to me. And I look forward to trying to see where this can go, because I've only just started. And I'm really pleased that everyone likes the beers, but I feel like there's plenty more in them.
The response that you've been getting online is wild, and not just from kind of customers, but from the industry as well. Everyone that I've spoken to within the industry, when the beer first kind of landed, it was, "Have you tried this beer? It's really bloody good. Where did this beer come from? It's really good." And it really it stands next to those table beers that you describe perfectly. And it's one of the first beers that I had tried in a long time where, you've got your mash gangs, but you expect them to be good. Like there's a precedent there. But with this, it was kind of, okay, this is new, and you try it and you think this is as close to the real thing in terms of high ABV craft beer as you can get. It really is a very good liquid. Well, two now. And in quick succession as well, 2 releases.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of new like products and ideas that have come about recently that really help with getting the beers actually tasting like beers, especially in terms of like product wise. There's some really good like new yeasts and stuff that really help out. So yeah, I'm excited for the whole industry, to be honest. I feel like the UK is really a great driving force in worldwide alcohol-free beer.
It's strange, isn't it? Because when you look at the kind of picture of the past that has been painted of Britain, like booze Britain, binge Britain, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then you see, younger generations or, the general sober kind of community growing, and not just sober people, but also people taking dry days or maybe being more aware of what they're drinking.
Yeah.
It's strange how quickly that kind of feels like it's come around, or perhaps it hasn't come around quickly. Perhaps it's only come around quickly for me because I had to stop drinking very, very quickly. But it really is growing. In the 2 years that I've been alcohol free, I've seen so many different breweries pop up, different beers, and the industry just seems to be going from strength to strength.
Yeah, it does. I don't know what's going on too much in other countries. I know Germany's always had good culture of alcohol-free brewing. They've had some great beers in the past, but I don't. It's not like craft beer. Craft beer, like it's just happened kind of in the last couple of years that more American beers are coming over, and you're able to compare like the American stuff with the British stuff, and you can see that there's differences there in how they do stuff to how we do stuff. But I don't really feel like that's happened with alcohol-free beer yet. Like the American stuff's not really come over. So we've got this driving force doing all of these great things, and I don't know how it stacks up with what they do, whether they're doing different stuff, whether it tastes completely different or what. But it doesn't seem to phase the UK brewers at all. We're just kind of powering through, and just like it's come such a long way in the last few years that I think my plan for the future is definitely to work with some other breweries and maybe some alcohol free breweries and see if we can put our heads together and like take it that step further.
Yeah, some collabs are very much needed.
Yeah.
Because it still feels special, I think. Like this, it feels like a little corner of the industry that's very lovely and very nice to each other. And I don't know if the beer industry as a whole is as toxic as some people might have made it out to be at one point. But within the craft industry, alcohol-free wise, everything that I've heard is mostly positive.
I've actually been quite surprised. I feel like it's still a little bit separate at the moment. The alcohol-free beer world and the actual beer world, and I feel like it's only recently that those two things have just been coming together. I've actually noticed it with you. Like you're speaking to some of the craft beer guys that are into their like high ABV stuff, and they're asking you for like what beers should I be drinking, and yeah, it's like it's just started to come together, which it seems like I've come into it at a really good time because I've grown up in a world of regular beer. I don't know if it's called regular beer. I've been trying to find
full fat I like to go with now.
Full fat beer. Yeah. Because I've been
normally with little quotation marks.
Like not alcohol free beer is beer, but I don't know how to say it when I put it into emails or in conversations and
proper
stuff.
Beer.
So it is proper, yeah.
I had someone once try to it's actually why my page became what it is with the whole like posh nonsense that I kind of spiel. Was it was a waiter in a quite a posh hotel I was staying in. And he was talking about the best way to drink alcohol-free wine. And he literally called it fake wine.
Really?
I was like, fake wine? It's like, it's got grapes in it. What more do you want? And
yeah,
I mean, that's the thing with alcohol-free beer. Like, it's still made in the same way.
Yeah, the way that I make it is because I want it to taste like beer. Like I'm into beer. I don't really. Well, I mean, I say that I don't want fruit juice or something, but I'll probably do some weird sour at some point that's like 50% fruit. So never say never to anything.
Yeah, you've got to have a little bit of ridiculousness within it, but you know that we want options. That's the thing. Like as a sober person, I want options. As someone that wished that I could moderate my drinking, I would have wanted options for when I was definitely not going to drink drive because I'm not a naughty boy. That's all we want, a decent options.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you're drinking an adult option. You want to sit there and cook and have a beer and spend time with your loved ones and your children and drink a beer, but not have the alcohol in it. It's like feeling like an adult and doing adult things
Yeah,
too.
it was massive. I mean, I've said from the start that alcohol-free beer literally saved my life. And I know that sounds like a very dramatic statement, but for me, it's not, because if alcohol-free beer didn't exist and wasn't good, then I would have carried on drinking, because the thought of not being able to do the social things that I enjoyed doing was just too much for me. So
Yeah,
the existence of alcohol-free beer literally saved my life. And
yeah,
you know, it's there for sober people. It's not suitable for everybody, because for some people giving up alcohol, it's too much of a trigger and it reminds them of, I'm going to say it now, the real thing. You know, but it's such a good tool for certain people. But it's not just for sober people, is it? You're right. It's for people that, you know, designated drivers, people who are on antibiotics, people that are trying to cut down on their drinking, having dry days. Like it's for everybody. It's not just for that very small group of people within the sober community. And I think it's about making it accessible to everybody. That's a really important thing. So seeing it in more bars and pubs, and even in the last couple of months, I'm seeing it more and more and more, and more decent options as well. And it's a really lovely thing to see.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's always been a bit of a weird one to get it onto bars before. There's always been like extra processes that you need to go through. So to have so many people experimenting with them processes and getting them onto bar and seeing how it goes is massive as well. It's like that's innovation in itself. Most people probably don't see it, but that's massive innovation on part of alcohol-free beer in the UK. Is there anyone in your world that still doesn't quite understand it?
I'm quite the thing that I have quite a lot is the whole ABV thing, where people within the kind of sober community will come at me and say, "You're drinking that, it's 0.5%, it's still got alcohol in it." And then you have to do the whole, you know, well, actually, orange juice has got that much in it, or bananas are 0.3 up to 0.5 if they're really, really ripe. And it's that's kind of a thing that I think, and that's down to, you know, UK legislation really, is not being able to call a 0.5% beer alcohol free. And it's ridiculous. Whereas, I mean, Lucky Saint can call theirs alcohol free because it's brewed in Germany, where the laws are more relaxed. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, no, it doesn't to me either. I think it's pretty much the whole world, isn't it? Well, like a large majority of it is 0.5 is alcohol free.
Yeah.
It's just not the UK. There's a term that they have in the legislation, which is, so 0.5% beer is de-alcoholized beer, which is the traditional method of taking the alcohol out of the beer.
Yeah, it's like vacuuming, isn't it? Am I right? Is that what?
Yeah, it's that's the process in a nutshell. But not all beer that's 0.5% is de-alcoholized. So that you could technically put that on your packaging without it being de-alcoholized because it's 0.5%. It's really weird legislation, but I think they're looking to change it at the moment.
Yes, I heard that recently, that it was being looked into. But with these things, maybe it's just because I've lived in the UK my entire life. I kind of go, oh yeah, okay, of course it will.
Yeah, so looking into it, also, I've always wondered about, like, where could you take these beers, and if you done like a 0.7% beer just to try and add a bit more flavor, a bit more body. I mean, it'd be very hard for an adult to feel anything from a 0.7% beer. So would you feel that that's, for you personally, be able to drink that and still feel okay?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think it's kind of, I think with that, it is each to their own. Like, was it, I think it was Tiny Rebel. No, it wasn't Tiny Rebel. Was it Mashkang and Vocation? There was a beer that came out that was 1%, basically, 2 years ago. And that was just at the start of my sobriety. And I drank it and didn't realize it was 1%. And then I was kind of like, oh, what have I done? Like, oh, this is awful. Didn't feel drunk in the slightest. Had no inclination to go back and have any more. But still, a part of me was like, have I broke my sobriety? And some people would probably tell me yes. So some people are going to be listening to this now and they're going to never listen to another thing I ever do because I'm not sober because I once drank a 1% beer. But I think if you can do it and honestly say to yourself, I will have this, and then that will be that at like 0.7, 0.8, or up to 1. I don't see a problem with that personally.
No.
But then I'm one of these people that I kind of, and this is how I know I'm an addict, is that I feel like I could probably have a pint and be fine. I'm never going to because I don't know that. I feel like I probably could because I've gone 2 years without now. Well, 2 years plus now. But it's kind of, I know what could happen if I go down that path again because it was really messy for me. And with all of the good stuff that's out there, what's the point? There's no point in me going back to it. There's really good beers that exist that don't have alcohol in them. So, but it would be interesting to kind of see where people stand with that, because like for you especially, because you're not just trying to sell to sober people, you know, it's about everybody looking at their drinking and being more kind of efficient in cutting down how much they drink, or just like we say, having options, because not everybody that drinks beer is an alcoholic, and that's something that I think sober people need to realize. Because otherwise we'd fucking hate everyone.
Yeah, because me personally, I'm not a sober person. I drink beers now and again. Find that I drink more alcohol-free beers these days.
Yeah, I think that
checking out the competition.
Yeah, well, I think that seems to be a thing within the beer industry as a whole. Like, you know, Mark Dredge, he drinks mostly alcohol-free. I know there are sober brewers that have to try proper beer. Again, we're calling it proper beer now, but that have to try beer with alcohol in from time to time, because it's when you make beer, you have to know what beer tastes like. You know,
you do,
So
yeah, absolutely.
It's just one of those, isn't it? And I think it is really important to kind of think to remember that not everybody that drinks is an alcoholic. Just because some of us are, and you know, the growth of the industry is only good for me. How difficult was it, like setting up from scratch? Like you say, it was a 3-year process from like concept to launch. How many challenges did you stumble upon when trying to get the beer out into the world?
Well, it was a long process. I was still at the brewery up until the beginning of last year. So, I mean, I was experimenting with alcohol-free beers, not under this brand. The brand actually come together pretty quickly. The only thing that took a long time was coming up with a name.
Yeah, I hate that.
Yeah, I had lists and lists of names. I have some that I was dead set on, and I look back at them now and I'm so pleased that I didn't go with them. There was part of me as well that didn't want to be a brewery or a brew co, or tied ultimately to just beer. I kind of see myself as a drinks brand. I'm a drinks brand, but I predominantly do beer. So, I mean, at one point, if there's something that I want to do, I'm just going to do it. Yeah. So the name was kind of
it's always the hardest thing, isn't it? Finding a name, like being in bands for years. It's always okay. What we're going to call ourselves, and it takes forever. Like to come up with something.
It does, and everyone has a different idea too, don't they?
Yeah, and it's a nightmare. I mean, I've seen today Low Tide changed, have had a rebranding and changed their name.
They have. It looks really cool.
It does look cool, but it was, you know, I woke up and saw, it was the first thing I saw when I woke up today. I saw these cans on my Instagram feed, and I was like, that looks like Low Tide, but it's not Low Tide. And then it was like, oh, okay, I see what's happened here.
I was about to race to the comments to say, to say, Rob, someone's stolen your branding.
Yeah. I was literally thinking that. I was thinking, this is outrageous. What's happened here?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was something I didn't expect to see today.
No,
but I suppose it's, when you've been going because they've been going for a while now, and they've seen the industry change so much since they started. I think it does. It just kind of highlights how good a time it is that you're getting into it. It really does feel like we're on the cusp of something really, really exciting within the world of alcohol-free beer.
Yeah, I don't know whether many people know. Rob from Low Tide, below Bruco. Sorry, he was one of the early champions of alcohol-free beer. He was a really early adopter, and he's been like fundamental in the whole of British alcohol-free beer. So they've done some amazing things out of the public eye that make Low Tide what it is. So they're like one of my big inspirations. Them, like the Mash Gang guys as well, who have been really lovely too. Like everyone's just lovely. This thing's just full of nice people.
I can remember being in the in Attic Brews like office the day that they first got your beer, and they were like, "Have you tried this, Ben?" I was like, "Yep." Oh, it's really good, isn't it? I'm like, "Yep." And then one of the directors turned around, the directors of Attic, and was like, "I've bought more of it." And it was like, "Sweet, that's really good." And I was in there literally doing work with them for their alcohol-free pale, and here we are discussing how good another brand's beer is.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't think that the industry would be like that, with competitors essentially. And I think it's just a really lovely thing to witness.
Yeah, it is. The guys from Attic have been really, really good too. I know that they work a bit with Rob too. But they're really they're kind of got their arm of their business cracking on with alcohol-free stuff as well, and they're bringing out some really good stuff, really forward-thinking, hop-forward beers. So
yeah,
it's excited to see where they go over the next year too.
They do a lot more than you realise. Like obviously with Clarkson's beer, and it was like okay. And that's the only reason I bought Clarkson's beer, was because I know they had a hand in it.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, yeah, it's nice. Because that's one thing I hate, when you get brands like that, with Jeremy Clarkson releasing alcohol-free beer for January. And it's like, come on, man. Like, that Jeremy Clarkson doesn't support alcohol-free beer. I mean, maybe I've got that wrong. Maybe he absolutely does. But it just feels like, it's some companies that have the money to do it will release just anything that's alcohol-free. And I think that's the thing that really needs to change within the alcohol-free industry, or I hope that people wake up to it. Because if I'm going to a bar and I'm trying a Heineken, I probably won't drink much more alcohol-free beer.
From someone who's been on the brewing side of things, I do kind of understand breweries bringing out their alcohol-free beer in January and trying to have a product available, because January notoriously for a brewery is an awful time. Like, it's such a hard industry to break even, let alone make money. That to have a whole month of sales being slashed by 50% it's a really tough month. People generally rely on having a good Christmas, and that's not extra money going into the coffers or into the director's pockets. It's generally to get through January. So I think there has been a bit of that culture in the past, like, let's have something else to sell. We'll still sell a few beers, but let's have something that we can sell a bit through in January. I feel like the idea of that is slowly changing, and there wasn't really, I mean, I was fairly new in January, but I haven't really seen a drop off in the amount of people purchasing the beer over February, which has been a real surprise to me. And I've been kind of happy about it, to be honest. I'm like, okay, so people do want this option year round, and you get breweries like, have you had the new track beer, the alcohol-free Sonoma?
Yes, I have.
I mean, they brought it out in February, which is like, that's a cool thing to do. It's like,
I didn't
not
realize
just
they'd only
trying to
brought
rush
it
it
out
out
then.
for January, but bringing it out in February. And I actually think what the second Cloudwater one that they did come out towards the end of January. So it wasn't even like, right, we need this for January.
That's for Fresh, wasn't it? Was it Fresh? Or was the one after Fresh?
I think they're both called Fresh.
Oh, okay. I had Fresh and the Citra one. It was Fresh and then Fresh Citra edition.
Yeah,
that's the one that I had most recently, was the Citra edition. They're very similar beers, actually, those two, but very, very good.
Yeah, they are. They're really good. The attitude is shifting.
I've never thought about it like that, to be honest. The whole, when you have brewers releasing something for January to make money, you kind of see it as like, oh yeah, okay. But then you're quite right. In hospitality, in January is terrible. And I think maybe
I'm sure that's not the whole reason. I'm sure they do want to make a wicked beer and they do want to experiment and try stuff. But I do feel like that is part of the reason also.
I think it's, I'm guilty of falling into the trap of thinking of kind of ignoring, that these breweries do need to sell actual beer as well, because I'm so in the world of alcohol free that whenever you see someone bring out an alcohol free beer that, there's not many companies that bring out an alcohol free beer that you think that they maybe have sinister motives. But like I say, when Clarkson brought his out, it was kind of like, no, you don't get to do this. I'm going to drink it because I want to try Attic's lager, but not yours. But you are right. They do need to make their money, and they do need to keep the business going for people's jobs, etc. So I'll maybe get off my high horse on that one for now.
Yeah. I think there's a difference between trying something and supporting it, isn't there? Like, if there's a brand that you don't want to fully support, you still have the right to try it.
Well, it's like Sam's Brown Ale. From Sam Smith. Samuel Smith Brewery is not a brewery that I like, and I don't like the guy who owns the operation. But my God, their brown ale is fantastic. And it's not the guy who owns the company didn't fucking make it. Someone else did. So fair play to them for making such a good brown ale, because it's delicious. But the company, abhorrent,
Yeah, they are, and it's really surprising because I've probably given them a lot of money in my younger days.
Oh, I was the same in Wetherspoons.
It used to be the cheapest place to drink. So I was also in a band as well, and as you know, it
doesn't pay, does it?
It doesn't pay, no. So I'll probably show my age here. You used to be able to get pints of the lager for £2. So we used to go there quite a lot.
Yeah,
it did used to make the tables go green, which was a bit worrying. But I think when you're 21, 22, you don't really care about that, though, do you?
Yeah, no, you just want beer in your face.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I do think maybe big alcohol could do a little bit more now for the industry. I can remember going to the Heineken brewery tour in Amsterdam years ago, and they were really pushing the Heineken 0.0, and it was, it was exciting. And at the time, it was like, do you know what? Fair play to them. They didn't release one for years. They wanted to get it right. And when it came to market, it was probably one of the best out there.
Yeah.
But now, it's aged terribly. And do you think that these kind of companies could revisit their process or refresh the drink and make it better? Or would that actually be really harmful to people like yourself that are actually, committed to making a good fucking beer because you want to make a good fucking beer?
I think it's almost like two separate industries, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like the big churn it out lager world is a million miles away from what a lot of these beers that we drink are. Like, it's so far removed. It could be like my beer and Cadbury's chocolate in terms of how far apart they are. I think it's just about cutting costs and making as much money as possible and just having like a really solid, consistent product that you can just pump out really quickly. So I don't know. I think it's nice that those big beer have started to do like unfiltered beers, and they're trying to like make them more flavorful. Like, people's palates have changed a little bit, so they're edging towards it and trying to get out tastier.
They'll get there like 5 years after the rest of us have got there. I'm sure.
When all the hops have run out.
Yeah, well, the message is support your local bottle shop, I think.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Always. I think that's the thing. Always go to your local bottle shop. I mean, even if you buy one beer a month, they could really do with it at the moment. Retail is in such a horrendous place in the UK that, bottle shops are in decline, and it's a shame to see, and they do need a bit of support. So always, go to a bottle shop.
I always advocate bottle shops. You know, like I get discount codes and all of this nonsense sent through to me quite often, and I'll mention it because, you know, if people want to use it, then cool, they can use it. But the place that I will go to first and foremost is always Sturchley Wines, because that's my local bottle shop. And even if I'm getting beers that I would order directly from a brewery, I will always go to Sturchley Wines and Spirits if I know they have it in. And if they don't have it in, when I go in there, I'll say, I've been drinking this lately, you should get it, because then I'll come and buy it off you. You know, it's just, it's really important, and the more that we support, like, we don't want these places to go out of business because we love beer. And it would be such a loss.
They're often run by like a couple or a small family. They're not like big businesses that have like loads of staff and stuff. They're like one or two people that work extremely hard to try and make their little bottle shop in whatever town work.
So you've said, you know, going forward, you'd like to do a sour, you'd like to do some collabs. You've already got 2 beers out at the moment that have been, well, they've gone down incredibly well. What would you like the next 12 months to look like for you?
Okay, so I want to work with some different brewers, as I said. Maybe some alcohol-free brands. Because my recipes are my own. I've been working with Ben from Gravity Well, so I took him the recipes in the first place, and we've been kind of tinkering about with them for the past, I mean, it's only been like 3 months, but it seems like a lifetime already. But it's only been the last few months, but we've been tinkering about with them and trying to refine them and get the processes done and stuff. So I don't know how people make these beers. I have no idea. Everyone's beer seems to taste a bit different to mine, so I guess they've got completely different methods. I think that's what's quite nice about it is with craft beer, there's a kind of a method in the way that people produce these beers, and they're not similar at all, but the process is quite similar, and they're all trying to get to the same goal. And it's been quite refined over the last 10 years, whereas alcohol-free is just like all over the place. Everyone's doing completely different things. So I'd like to take the recipes from different places and just try and see what some amazing brewers think of the recipes and what they would do and their take on it, and see if we can take it a step further. I like drinking IPAs, pale ales. So predominantly my output will be those, because I just like drinking them the most out of all beers.
Yeah.
Like, I'll probably have one stout in every 20 beers that I'll have. So in my eyes, I'll do one stout every 20 releases.
It makes sense though. You've got it, you know, if you love it, that's what you got to make.
Yeah.
You know, like, there's no point in making something for the sake of making it. I mean, there is a point, but it's some people don't work like that. I think it's quite nice to only have things in your arsenal that you love and you really care about. So I think that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, and I think he's getting excited about stuff too. So I've just set up a small kit that I'm going to do research and development on, and I've started producing small batch lagers on the system, and that's going really well. So I think I need to run it maybe one more time before I go full scale on it, but they're tasting really good. I really want to do a stupid sour as well. So hopefully by the end of summer, I'll have a core range and a couple more styles. I don't know whether that's pushing it because I'm a bit limited in what I do. It's just me. So, but hopefully core range, a few more IPAs, a few collabs, a sour and a lager. That might be a bit too much, but I'm going to try.
Well, I look forward to trying them as and when you release them. Thanks, you very much for the chat. I could talk about just beer all day, which is probably really unhealthy for an alcoholic to say, but thank you for making the industry a better place with your presence. And I can't wait to see what comes in the future.
No worries. Thanks for listening to me waffle on and being a beer geek.
It's my pleasure.
Cheers, Ben.
Don't say I didn't warn you, it's two men talking about beer. It's just this one doesn't have alcohol in it, which is good for alcoholics like me. My name's Ben, this has been the Sober Boozers Club podcast. Thank you very much for listening. You can find me on Instagram at Sober Boozers Club. Go and find We Can Be Friends as well. Give them a search, maybe put the word beer afterwards if you're struggling. It's really, really good liquid and I can't wait to see what they come up with next. So you do that for me and I'll see you very soon.